Welcome back to Fantasy Baseball 360 alongside Nando DeFino and Scott White. I'm George Sedano. Time to talk to former Mets GM Steve Phillips, who will join us here. You can currently listen to him each and every weekday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Mad Dog Radio with my buddy Evan Cohen. I had to throw in, Steve, I had to mention Evan because if not, he'd give me grief if I didn't mention him there briefly. So.
Oh, no, there's no question about that. And listen, any friend of Evan's a friend of mine. So I say that tongue-in-cheek, honestly. He's my co-host, but he does a great job, and it's a lot of fun working with him.
No doubt, and we appreciate it. It's a great show, definitely. So let's get right into this. The Washington Nationals, I want to talk to you because they've just been so good, but what do you make of their rotation overall?
I mean, it's exceptional. When you ask people, who has the best ERA in baseball, not many people come up with the Nationals, but they have great depth. They've got young arms. They've got balance. Guys with great stuff. I mean, Gio Gonzalez has been a terrific addition to that rotation. Jordan Zimmerman, is gaining some experience to go with the quality stuff that he has as well. And you just love the depth of it. I mean, right now, Edwin Jackson is really their fifth starter. I mean, which is amazing. Detweiler's done a nice job for him. So they're a fun team, and you got to love the young arms there. They're making a statement early in the season right now in the National League East.
Steve, one pitcher who hasn't been all that impressive so far is Francisco Liriano. Just terrible, despite having an impressive spring training. Now the Twins are skipping him. How long do you think they stick with him in the starting rotation, considering how awful he's been?
Well, listen, there's kind of a protocol you go through when you have a pitcher that's struggling. It's certainly a guy with a little bit of experience. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to try to push through it, get him the ball, and just see if he can't work through it himself. When that doesn't work, you skip a start, do some extra side sessions, try to make that work, bring him back into the rotation, give him a couple more starts, see how that goes. And then if it doesn't work, then you have to contemplate, well, what else do we do? Do we skip him again? Do we possibly find to see if he has options left, to see if we can't send him to the minor leagues to be able to, with some sort of agreement with him to go down there and get a few starts in to try to get his command and control back? Because right now, he's walking too many guys. I mean, his walks and strikeouts are almost 1-to-1. Almost equal to his innings. I mean, he is really scuffling throwing over the plate. And you wonder whether it's mechanics or whether it's in his head. I think there's some part of him that his fastball isn't what it used to be. And his approach is that he's trying to miss bats. So he's nibbling, working off the plate, working behind in the count, afraid to throw it over. And he's got to change his mentality right now. Whatever his fastball is, he has to have the courage to throw it over and try to get strike one. Because once he gets ahead in the count, it allows him to work the secondary pitches to be able to try to expand the strike zone. But when you're behind, you're having to bring the ball back over the plate. The hitters are finding themselves in those 2-0, 3-1 counts, and they're looking for a pitch they can drive. So, he's got to find the confidence and courage to throw his fastball for a strike. And if he doesn't do that, then they're going to have to find out, if he goes to the bullpen or maybe even, out of the major leagues completely.
Steve, one pitcher who seems to be a little further along that process that you referred to, Jair Jurgens. He already got sit down because he's been awful to begin the season, just like Liriano. In his case, do you see it as something where maybe he just needs a start or two to clear his head, or could you see him being down there for a while?
Well, it's kind of the same sort of thing. I mean, Jurgens, an all-star last year, which is an amazing thing, and it really shows you what a fine line it is for even some of the best major league players, that level of walking that fine line of being confident and losing that confidence. And, I think there's some part of him that's lost the confidence. I had a chance to talk to Leo Mazzoni, longtime Braves pitching coach, does a lot of Braves pre- and post-game stuff, so he's around the team quite a bit. And he said they just have to try to rebuild his confidence, but also get him to back in the strike zone and rebuild some of the velocity on his fastball. He does not have the velocity he's had in the past, didn't have a good spring training. The first thing you have to find out is there something wrong. Is he healthy? If there's not a health issue, then they have to really try to figure out mechanically what's going on, why he's lost that velocity on his fastball. And same thing for him. No matter what the velocity is, he has to have the courage to throw it over the plate. You have to be able to try to hit your spot with it. Velocity is less important than hitting your spot in command within the strike zone. So if he gets ahead of the count, then he can go to that slider, then he can go to his changeup and start to work off of it. But I see him going down, and he's usually it's going to take good 2, 3, 4 starts down there. If he has a good AAA start, they're going to probably want him to get another good AAA start just to build on that, and then bring him back up to the big leagues after that. So, it could be a month or so before you see Jurgens or, any other starting pitcher who's struggling that gets sent down to the minor leagues.
Steve, speaking about a guy who has some pitching problems, Bobby Valentine, you worked very intimately with him with the Mets. Can you explain exactly what he's doing with Boston? I mean,
calling Euclid out, is that part of a huge game plan? And are you sitting there saying, oh, this is what he's doing is very smart. This is vintage Bobby Valentine, or is it just headed for destruction, I guess?
Well, it's vintage Bobby Valentine. So you can determine whether it's smart or not. I'm kind of looking at it from the outside and understanding that Bobby's pretty entertaining. When you're the guy that's the general manager having to deal with the fallout from all of this, it turns your hair white, which unfortunately has happened to me. So I think that Bobby's style is different. He does tend to play the villain. And he did that with the Mets teams. There's some part of it you see him doing it with the Red Sox, where players do get motivated by his style. They typically don't try to play hard for him. They try to play hard to spite him, to try to prove him wrong. Bobby will challenge veteran players. A lot of times he challenges those guys who he thinks can take it. Euclid is a very emotional, fiery guy. This I think was a mistake this time for Bobby, but I don't think that the Red Sox struggle so far this year. If it has to do with a managerial problem, I think it has to do with a personnel problem. They don't have the pitching. I mean, we started the season with questions about their starting rotation. What's Josh Beckett going to be this year? Is Clay Buchholz's health going to maintain itself? And we had questions about their bullpen. They let Papelbon go. They replaced him with Andrew Bailey. And then when Bailey goes down, the rest of the bullpen is in flux. And, I really do believe that the bullpen is kind of a living, breathing organism where the closer's its head. When the closer is okay and everybody else is okay, the pitching and the roles are supposed to be in, everybody's settled. But when you lose your closer before the season, and they put a Sevis in there, who's a good, versatile pitcher, but he's not a closer. And then if Sevis struggles, everybody else thinks, uh-oh, if the closer's not right, then what about me? What role am I going to be in? And it really has impacted, I think, the mentality of the entire pitching staff out there. So, the best thing that happened, what really made me believe maybe the tide was turning and the luck was changing, was they got rained out on Sunday against the Yankees. That was the best possible thing that could have happened for the Red Sox last Sunday. They don't need to play the Yankees when they're struggling like that. They also don't need to play in front of Red Sox fans when they're struggling like that. They got a chance to catch their breath. Their bullpen got a chance to regroup without pitching on Sunday. They go to Minnesota. They win a game on Monday where they give up the lead, come back late. They kind of knock them around on Tuesday. And it seems to me that maybe they're starting to come together a little bit. They don't have a managerial problem. They have a personnel problem with their players. And I think that's going to be the big issue. Do they have enough pitching?
What do you make of his move of putting Bard back in the bullpen, I guess, for the time being? It's just kind of odd, I guess.
Well, I personally think that Bard is better served in the bullpen. I do. Now, there are others who think that, you get an arm like that, you put him in the rotation. But when I looked at where they had question marks, they had him in the rotation and in the bullpen. And the reality is, no matter where he is, they're going to come up an arm or two short. So they can move him into the bullpen, and I think he is the right move to go out there and stabilize the bullpen right now. You can run it up there 98 to 100 miles per hour. And what he does, when you throw that hard, big league hitters can hit the hard fastballs. Everybody can. But he throws hard enough to be able to make mistakes in the zone. A Sevis, if he throws 91 miles per hour and he finds the heart of the plate, he's going to pay for it. Bard can throw that same spot and get away with it because of the velocity on it. So I think it's the right move for the Red Sox right now. It may not be the right move for Bard personally and individually, but it's the right move for the team. They need somebody to give them some stability and some margin for error, and Bard's stuff certainly gives them that.
Steve, do you think Melanson has any shot? I mean, was this a head thing when they made Sevis the closer and Melanson's like, oh, all right, well, I'm just middle innings now, I won't try that hard, or is it just something that he just needs to tweak down in the minors maybe? Is there any chance he can come back?
I think he could come back, but I think there's questions about whether he has the kind of mental makeup and structure and character to be the closer. I think he's better served, but I do believe that he might have felt passed over. And everybody says, well, just pitch in whatever role they call upon you in. Bill James, works for the Red Sox, and he said before, just go bullpen by committee. Sometimes you need your best pitcher in the seventh inning. Why do you always save him for the ninth inning? That sounds good philosophically. It sounds good when you write it up and draw it up on paper. It's not how it works, because it's not numbers that pitch the game. It's people. And it's people with personalities and feelings and emotions. And from day to day, the way they're treated, the role that they're in, the situation of the game impacts the sort of adrenaline they have pumping, the mentality they have to approach the game, the aggressiveness that they have to pitch in the game. And for Melanson, it could very easily have been that, he thought he should have been the closer. He wasn't quite right. He ends up getting knocked around, and they'll put him back together. He will be a functional pitcher for the Red Sox at some point this year. I don't see him as the closer.
Steve, Tim Lincecum in his last start finally had a decent line, at least as far as the strikeouts go. But his velocity was still down. He was missing his spots at times. And we've heard some reports that, some scouts think he might be pitching through a hip injury. What have you seen with Lincecum, and do you think he's going to bounce back?
Well, his mechanics certainly aren't there. Now, his last start, you're right, was progress. I think he had 10 strikeouts, but 5 walks. He had like 108 pitches in 5+ innings, and so he wasn't very efficient with his stuff, and the velocity's not quite there. We saw this a couple of Augusts ago. I think August 2010, Lincecum looked like he'd never pitched before. Everything was up in the zone. His velocity was kind of missing. They were able to put him back together. He has kind of the quirky delivery. It's not conventional. I think that there's something mechanically not right with him right now, where everything is up in the zone and the velocity's not there. His timing isn't right. The rotation isn't right with his stride and everything else. So, my guess is they will get him back on track. The first question you always ask is he hurt? But there's no indication that he's hurt, and then you've got to get back to the mechanics. Something doesn't look right with the mechanics. Now, maybe it's because he's hurting somewhere and he's compensating for it. He's got that real long stride toward the plate. He puts a lot of wear and tear on that hip with the way he kind of torques his body and comes at the hitter. But if he were hurting in that way, they know they're putting his arm in jeopardy, and they would take a break this early in the season to try to rest him and get it right. So my sense is that this is something that will be fixed. That his last start was certainly a step in the right direction. I think in 5 career starts against the Mets, he's 4-0, so it was a good confidence booster for him to pitch against the Mets. But I think that for Lincecum, he'll get back on track, and I don't think people should run away from him. He will be a productive pitcher this year.
Steve, lastly, we get a lot of questions about prospects, Bryce Harper, Trout, Bauer, all these type of guys. As a former general manager, when do you know it's time to call these guys up?
Well, you always want to set prospects up to succeed when they get to the big leagues, So, typically players do tell you when they're ready for the next level. It doesn't take a brain surgeon, when you're watching guys move through the minor leagues at A-ball, AA, AAA, to say, okay, well, he's ready for the next level. They show a level of dominance. They show that if they have a bad day, they can come back the next day and be able to make adjustments necessary to get it done. I think that so much is impacted nowadays by money. The call-up to the big leagues sometimes is based upon not wanting a player to become arbitration eligible too quickly. So, you see the Steven Strasburgs and the Ryan Brauns and Evan Longorias, they're called up, sometime in late May, early June, just so the player doesn't become a Super 2 and become arbitration eligible a year earlier, to where he ends up making big money for a year too soon. An extra $1 million, $1.5 million in the contract. But I think that ultimately, I always like to see a guy prove that he can get the job done at that level. He can struggle a little bit and then regroup at that level, because every single hitter is going to get to the big leagues. Every single pitcher is going to get to the major leagues, and they're going to struggle at some point. And you don't want to send them down to fix them. You want them to be able to fix themselves while they're at that level, and try to work through it. And I think that having some failure at a level and then getting yourself put back together, to me, really tells me that a player ultimately is ready for that next level of play.
Steve Phillips, former Mets general manager. Currently, you can catch him weekdays on Mad Dog Radio, weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Evan and Phillips, 6 to 10 a.m. on Mad Dog Radio. Steve, thanks for the time, man. That was awesome. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime, guys.
All right, take care. Steve Phillips with us here on Fantasy Baseball 360. Coming up next, I go get my gavel. Judge George, you sent in some trades. These guys will debate it, and I will decide. Judge and jury right here. Coming up next, you're on Fantasy Baseball 360.